Do you want to make Minecraft thumbnails just like this one? Well, you're in the right place because I'm going to teach you how to make the best Minecraft thumbnails. We'll be designing 5 different thumbnail styles. We'll start off with the absolute basics, then we'll move on to Bedwars ASMR, then SMP, texture pack release, and even horror. Fabric 1.20.1, Fabric API, Iris for shader compatibility, Celltop's new NPC mod, Sodium for performance optimization, Word Edit which is optional, shaders I use Brogger, I leave that in the description, Photoshop or Photopea if you don't feel like becoming Captain Jack Sparrow. Here are the best settings for your world. Start by putting your game mode in creative, then difficulty peaceful. Now put the world type to super flat and turn off generate structures. Now go into your game rules tab, scroll down until you find spawning and then turn everything off. Now scroll down once again and do the same thing for all the world updates. Now open your inventory and find the NPC preset tool. Here you can find some pre-made poses. I'm choosing the walking one. Now by grabbing the rotator tool, you can right click onto your NPC and it will rotate exactly how you want it to. Then with the NPC wand, you can change your character's skin and model type. Then when you're done, you can hit on finalize to save all of the changes that you've made. And now congrats, you have finally made your NPC. Now it's time to set the scene. You can build a simple environment by planting trees and placing blocks, or you can make an elaborate one. The key is to be creative. And now it's time to take a screenshot. First off, turn down your FOV to 30, then find a good angle. I usually go for a low run since it looks more cinematic. And now stop! I already see you trying to hit F2, but the NPC mod actually allows us to separate the background from our character. So hit F7 instead and select the highest resolution to take the screenshot. Now drag your background into Photoshop and then add your character. Next up, we have to change the sky, and I happen to have a little trick to do that faster. Go to your background layer, then hit select and choose sky. After you have selected the sky, you can simply hit your delete key, and then find a better sky to drag into the canvas. Now as you can see, the sky is a bit too dark, so I'm going to change its colors. To do so, I'll add a brightness and contrast adjustment layer, where I'll crank up the brightness and down the contrast. At this point, the rest of the background needs some color adjustment as well. This time we'll add a brightness and contrast layer and also a hue and saturation one. The exact settings are subjective, but the overall goal is to make everything more bright and more saturated. Now, after positioning our character, it's time for the most important part, layer styles. First off, let's add some gradient overlay. I'm selecting the simple black to white gradient and then I change the blending mode to overlay. And I turn on the opacity to about 50%. Next up, I turn on inner glow. I set the blending mode to overlay again and the color to white and play around with the settings. Then I'm adding some simple black drop shadow. Feel free to copy my settings and tweak them around. A very interesting effect is inner shadow, which allows us to create some depth. I think it gives a very unique touch to our character. Lastly, you can add some outer glow to make the character pop more. Now it's time to add some text. To do so, you simply hit T on your keyboard and then type whatever you want. I chose to write thumbnail. Now you can hit ESC and resize and move your text. Now you want to change the font, I chose Burbank Big Condensed. Now double click to go to the layer styles and add some drop shadow. Make the color light gray, the angle 90 and increase the distance. Then add some gradient overlay. For the gradient, make it from light gray to white. This will create a nice shadow effect and give the text some depth. Now add some inner glow with the same settings that we've used before. Now select your text layer and group it by hitting Ctrl G. Then go to the layer styles and add a black stroke and some drop shadow. Lastly, I'm adding a subtitle, this time using the font Montserrat. And then I use the layer style that I found in a GFX pack. Now after some final tweaks to make the text pop more, it's finally done. The thumbnail is almost finished, but it needs some minor adjustments, so I took a white soft brush and gently painted some dots onto the canvas. I then changed the blending mode to overlay. I lastly painted some light onto the character and I did some more little tweaks. So after all of our work, this is the final result. Next up is the Bedwars ASMR thumbnail. For this thumbnail, I positioned my character in a Bedwars map, which I had downloaded from the internet. After taking my screenshots, I imported them into Photoshop. The first thing that I did was removing the background just like we did before. Then I tried to separate the background in different layers with the pen tool, which allowed me to make the school blue effect with a soft brush. Afterwards, I edited the colors of the background and character, and I added the same layer styles that we have used before. Another thing that I did was adding path blur to make the character more dynamic. Then I added a keyboard and mouse PNG behind the characters and gave them some layer styles. After that, I typed in ASMR and used my favorite font, Question. To make the character look more alive, I added some hit particles. I made a copy of everything and merged it into a single layer, and I added a camera raw filter to make the colors more vibrant. After adding some textures, this is the final result. Now it's time for the SMP thumbnail. My title idea for this thumbnail was how I was banned from my school's SMP. So I put my character on top of a wall and made two of my friends aim at me as if I was a target. SMP thumbnails are oftentimes very simple, without any special shaders, and that's what makes them so good. So in Photoshop, all I did was changing the sky, separating the background and the singular characters, adding some simple layer styles, adjusting the colors, adding some text, and the thumbnail was complete. Texture pack release thumbnails are everywhere, but have you ever wondered how to create them? Well, I'm here to help you. First off, we need a background, so let's use a Bedwars map. Then you'll simply want to give your character the walking position and take a screenshot. In Photoshop, I started with the usual background change and character layer styles. But then we need to import the texture packs widgets, image, and the icons one. Within the widgets tab, you'll want to recreate 3 slots of the inventory bar and separate the selector. In the icons tab, you'll need to take 3 normal hearts, 3 food bar items, and 6 levels of experience bar. Then you paste in the inventory bar, and by using the crop tool, which you can access by clicking C on your keyboard, you'll want to crop the borders of the image you just put together. Now you'll want to copy the whole image and paste it in your thumbnail, but make sure that the interpolation method is nearest neighbor. Then by hitting Ctrl T and then holding down Ctrl, you can actually change the perspective of your image. And now I have a little trick to make the image appear more 3D. Just group the whole thing, then after selecting the image layer, press Ctrl T and then up arrow key and left arrow key. Then hit enter and press Ctrl Shift Alt T a few times. Now just merge all of the layers inside the group and voila, your thumbnail is almost complete. Now we just need to add a few more items into the inventory and give some effects. I think the thumbnail turned out great. Time for the horror thumbnail. For this one, I want to make my character encounter Herobrine. I created a dark forest background to set the mood and I positioned my characters. I also added some redstone torches to make everything creepier. I know that you might be tempted to put the time to night, but we need the daylight to take the screenshot properly. In Photoshop, I once again gave both of my characters some layer styles and then I changed the background to a night sky. It's very important in horror thumbnails to make them look dark and moody, but at the same time have some light to keep the image interesting and distinguish the characters from the background. That's why I added some light where the redstone torches are, and I tried to make the characters pop with the inner shadow. I also added this cool light effect to Herobrine to make him stand out even more. I lastly added some textures, and the last thumbnail was finally done. If you need to look for assets, I highly recommend you to join the Creator Coaster Discord server. I'm not sponsored by them, but I really love the community. Also, it literally took me 3 months to make this video, so I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe.